Hey, folks, thanks for joining me for this episode of the Embellish Podcast, an opportunity for me to ramble about whiskey or something for a few minutes. If you got here by chance, please take a moment to hit the subscribe button. Hopefully, you can be found on any podcasting platform that exists. And if you can't find me on a platform, send me an email at embellishpod@gmail.com and I'll get that taken care of. You can also generally find the video versions of these podcasts on YouTube. You can also find all of my links at Instagram at embellishpod or Twitter with the exact same handle. I have a website. It is www.embellishpod.com. It's a place to pick up these links, episode details, and more. Today, we're going to have a fantastic guest on. I'm going to have Jackie Zykan join me. She currently is working with Hidden Barn. If you've been around the whiskey industry for more than 10 minutes, you probably know exactly who she is. And we're not going to spend very much time talking about whiskey today. We're going to talk about a handful of other things that I think are pretty important as well. So join me in welcoming her, and I hope you guys enjoy this episode. All right, this afternoon I have Jackie joining me. I'm going to give her an opportunity to introduce herself to the 7 or 8 people that listen to this. Probably already know who you are, but kind of give us the rundown on who Jackie is, and I'll start with a really off-the-wall question.
Okay, well, hello everybody. I'm Jackie Zykan. I'm one of the partners of Hidden Barn Whiskey, and I'm excited to be here. The content that we're going to talk about today is stuff that I really enjoy having space to get into. So I am just honored to have the opportunity. And now I'm a little nervous about what this first question is, but that's okay. We're going to get into it.
No, it's not too bad. And I really appreciate you hopping on. I try to make these not like everything else. I mean, why would I start a podcast if I want to talk about what everybody else is talking about? And so this is more of maybe a mental exercise. And it does impact maybe what you do. But let's just say I were to put a button in front of you. And if you press the button, all of social media is immediately and irreparably broken. Would you press the button?
Broken as in like it's gone, like it no longer exists. It's just
social media is gone.
I don't know. I don't necessarily have a need to get rid of it or to keep it. It's just one of those things that's there and you engage with as is. But do I think that getting rid of it is going to somehow boost the world into some sort of like positive evolution? No. Keeping it, or are we missing anything by having it? No. I think that there's some really great positives and some really intense negatives to it. And I don't want to be the one who's responsible for making that decision. How about that? So I'm not pressing the button.
I understand that completely. And I've had a varied number of, I haven't asked this on a podcast. This is a thing that I ask several employees, and I try to ask, just kind of random questions to get their brain moving in a different direction. We had a really, really spirited discussion about this particular one, because it really is about whether social media and things like that are a net gain or a net loss on society. Are they, healthy for us? Is our brain developed appropriately enough to be able to handle this degree of communication? Right. Because I read an article and a guy was talking about, I don't know if you do this, maybe you don't, but you get on a phone call with somebody, all of a sudden you feel like you just need to walk everywhere. And just end up just kind of like pacing around while you're trying to talk to somebody on the phone.
Yeah.
It's your brain's trying to find the person you're talking to, because it's used to seeing them with your eyes. And when you don't see them, your brain doesn't know how to process it. It's like a subliminal response, or subconscious response. I don't know if that's true or not, but like social media is in the same vein, where maybe our brains aren't developed enough to handle the responsibility of it. But a lot of what you do is on social media, and it's kind of for the world to see. And the main reason I reached out to you, and I appreciate you for hopping on, was you had this post around Derby Day, and it was about mental health, and it was about kind of finding your right place. And if you would just kind of describe that moment, like what put you in a position where you felt like you needed to post that, because I don't think enough people are. I think it was like a really, really impactful and powerful thing that you did, but just kind of the context of it.
Sure. So, I mean, I feel like I'm a little bit more transparent than most when it comes to things like that. I don't want to use the word shameless, because I don't think that's necessarily what I am by any means. It's just that I'm comfortable in my stance on things. And I know that there have been plenty of moments in my life wherein seeing somebody else be comfortable enough to be publicly open about certain things has given me sort of permission to feel and do certain things. And so, we always have a choice every day with everything that we do, and whether we're going to, focus on the negative or focus on the positive. And this isn't about like bypassing or toxic positivity by any means, but in any given situation, if you give yourself a moment, you can make a choice of how you receive that and act upon it. And so the Derby thing was interesting. So I left Brown-Forman a year ago now. I guess it has been. In a couple of days, it'll be a 1-year anniversary of not being with that company anymore. And I had an amazing tenure there. I have no regrets of being there. But Derby was sort of this interesting closure point for me because for the past 7 years, I have had to be at the track for weeks on end. And, you know, people are like, oh, you get to go to Derby. And it's like, yes, that's great. But also what you don't see is that I also have to get up at 2 a.m. and then be camera ready and have everything together. I have kits packed for every single day of like 30 different cocktails that have to be made. In the back of your mind, you're like, make sure the mint doesn't wilt, make sure the ice doesn't melt, make sure this doesn't happen, make sure all of the bottles are smudge free, like every little detail. And there's so much stress around that. And then you go to the track and you start at 4 a.m. doing interviews and being smiley and being on and giving your best to promote a product. And it's all fun and it's beautiful and it's great. And you get to see the sunrise and the horses are running, but you do that for 8 days in a row. And then you are this shriveled prune of a human. You haven't eaten. You've been at the track for 18 hours a day. You're on no sleep, but you still got to look like you had a full night's sleep and you still got to act like you did. Plus you're being handed booze left, right, and wherever. And granted, you can always say no, but sometimes people, it's just not as easy of a decision to say no in certain situations. When you're in the alcohol industry, like, why aren't you drinking your own brand? Like, people are going to kind of have questions. But you get to Derby Day and it's just like, I can't wait for this race to be over. And that is not, to me, that's not how I want to go forth and experience these moments in life. But like, the fact of the matter is like, you're worn out and it's not all glamorous and like fun. There's a lot of work that goes into that. And there's a lot of work that goes into this industry in general. And so I try to be transparent about that, not in a woe is me, pity me, blah, blah, blah. It's not about that. I can handle my own crap, you know? It's more so of like, look, I'm a human and you're all humans. Like, let's all just please conduct ourselves as humans and stop feeling like we have to wear this facade or be stronger than that or not have any complaints or issues or everything. Just let it be what it is. And so all of these posts that I do are more so encouraging people to be comfortable just being human about everything, because that's how we connect with each other. It's not by having a Pinterest curated life that you put out there. It needs to be real. So that post was very much, I woke up that day and realized like, oh yeah, this is the first Derby that I haven't had to work at all in any capacity. So this is my new chapter. This is kind of like the bookend. I had already been gone for months from that job, but like, this was the moment that it hit me of like, oh yeah, I made some really hard decisions and this is where I'm at. And it feels really, really good. And this is awesome. And I, grateful for the past experiences always, but it's okay to make hard decisions and scary choices and things that seem very risky when you're following what is right for you individually, right? Not what looks right for everybody else out there. So that's kind of where that came from. I just went on a tangent. I do that.
No. This is what this is for, right? That's exactly what I hope. I don't want you to share anything you don't want to share, but obviously, this is more of a conversation, and that's what I wanted this to be. A little bit more unique. And if you see me keep looking down, I'm not being rude. I keep a notepad here and I'm taking notes and having other questions that develop, but I know sometimes it's like, oh, is this asshole playing with his phone or like, what's he doing here? No. You mentioned a word earlier. You said, you don't want it to feel like you're shameless. And this is a thing I've tried to instill in my daughters is, I'm trying to put them in a position where they feel unfuckwithable as they get older, right? Is that it's not that you're not aware of it. It's just that you're not necessarily willing to let someone kind of push in on your life and make you feel a certain way unless you're okay with that, right? You don't have to do that. And social media becomes this place. And this is kind of the beginning of that question earlier. where we have these vignettes of life, right? Where people are carefully curating what they are. And the reason why I thought what you posted was so very important is that there's not a ton of that reality happening, at least not within the greater whiskey social media sphere, right? There's a whole lot of, let's have a good time, let's make sure we all look happy, being on all the time. And there's not a ton of real, at least not in what I see. The algorithm doesn't kind of send that in my direction. And it has to be tough, right, in your position, because you're in the spotlight 100%. Like, that's what your job is being on all of the time. What kind of toll, like, you've had maybe sometime, I mean, you're still the face of this other thing that's happening with Hidden Barn, but it feels like you've maybe taken control of your narrative a little bit more in the last year than the time frame before that. But what is this like having to live like that, where if you're drinking the wrong brand, somebody's going to question you. If you're not smiling all the time, like, how does that impact you?
So I think the industry and the positions that I've had in it are definitely susceptible to those environments wherein there is that being on and that pressure and etc. But I don't think it's exclusive to the alcohol industry by any means. I'm not one that likes to go down this like gender inequality path by any means, because I don't wake up every day and I'm like, I'm a woman and I'm going to do the woman thing and prove you wrong. Like, there's no like anger or spite or like rebellion behind it. It's just like, I happen to wake up and I just do what I do as a person. And then here we are. But I do think that women more so than men have been conditioned to have to show up in a certain way more so and be more polished, and there's a lot less margin of error. And like, if I'm giving a tasting and I misspeak one little thing, whether it's the entry proof of something or the mash bill of something, in that moment I will lose significantly more credibility than somebody else. Even if I catch myself and flip it around, it doesn't matter. So there is an immense amount of pressure to always have the right answer. I'm not a person that's going to make something up just to make it sound like I have an answer. I will be the first to say, you know what? I don't know, but let's dig into it and we'll figure it out later, or I'll get back to you on that. But just saying, like, when you are expected to be the expert on certain category knowledge, you cannot screw up. And it's not even like, oh, these people think I'm a dumbass. It compromises a brand and something so much bigger than you. So there is so much pressure with that. And it's always funny to me because, like, especially in my past role, you go one day and you've got to do like a close-up photo shoot of making a cocktail. So your nails have to be perfect. But then that afternoon, I have to go to the warehouse and drill into barrels. And if I chip something, it's like shut down the world. And now I got to go fix my hands, or I'm going to get an angry email about like, well, her nail polish was chipped tomorrow. And it's like, these are tiny little, this is first world problems as we call it, right? But these are still things that like are constantly white noise stress in the back of your mind. Make sure that your makeup is right. Make sure that your hair looks right. Make sure that you don't have cleavage showing. Make sure this, make sure that. Like, it's just all these weird little nitpicky things that just, they eat away at you over time. And it's a lot. I feel like I got away from the original question of this though, because I just started.
No. That was the question. It was like, how does this impact you? And it's a lot, and it's a heavy thing. And I don't think that there have been people in the industry that have tried to focus on, it's female this, female that, and I really I hate the fact that we have to. But we do have to, like, I say we as the privileged class of this conversation, right? Because obviously the whiskey industry looks a lot more like me than you most of the time, because it's very much an old white man thing. That's the state of it. But we have to kind of foist upon you this situation where you're a female, and now everybody's like, point out the fact that she is a female, not the fact that your qualifications are the most important thing, and those are what got you where you were, right? It wasn't this other thing. But we also have to talk about it because we haven't. There has been kind of glass ceilings in the past, and there's all these sort of things that happen. And I was at a tasting that was being hosted by Peggy No, and I watched another guy try to explain to her about tasting. And I'm like, I don't feel like they would have done the same thing had it been some other guy, and my immediate reaction is like, there's no one in this room that should tell her anything. Like, I know these people that are sitting around me, we don't have that. And so it does exist, right? Like it's a real problem and it's a real thing. But you have all these kind of these pressures that push in on you from all of these different things. How do you find balance for yourself, like mentally and emotionally? Like what are the tricks? What are the things that you do for yourself? I don't want to say tricks because that kind of seems reductive, but
yeah, no, I see what you're saying. I don't know. I think that's all. It's all a pressure and it's all a stress, but there's other things in life that are also stress and pressure. I mean, shit comes from every direction, right? So I kind of default to the same methods every single time, no matter what it is. One of the things about the booze industry that's really interesting is that you're the one person in the room who is expected to always have a drink in hand, but you're never allowed to get drunk. And so with that comes having to eat constantly, right? In order to have a base, you can have an empty stomach, but then you can't gain weight because you don't want people to like see that. And then you're gonna have to be on camera and do all this other crap. And so it's just this weird like cycle. I'm a person that I'm great in a crowd and I'm a great public speaker, but I do have a very short tolerance of social interaction. I actually like have to recluse quite a bit in order to just like reclaim my own energy from like just interacting with people. So I hide in the woods, as I call it. It's not hiding in the woods. Like, let's be honest. I'm not like trying to not be found, but I do need time outside. I need time to be barefoot. Like half the time I give a presentation, I'm barefoot and people are like, something's wrong with this girl. But like, it's a weird little thing that I do to just feel a sense of connection outside of just the bombardment of other people's energy. But then you get to this point where you're like, you travel in any industry where you have to travel for work, your sleep schedule is off, you're eating restaurant food constantly, it gets out of whack really quick. And so anymore, I have had to come to the point of standing up for my own health and be like, if I need time alone or away, I'm going to take it and I'm not going to feel bad about it. If I need to pack my own food to go on work trips in like a lunchbox, like that's what I will do. Or I will go to the grocery store and make sure I have time in my schedule to do that instead of eating at a restaurant all the time. Go easy on the drinks, drink a ton of water. You know, there's a lot of supplements I take to counteract the fact that I probably drink more than the average bear. And you find the ways, but for me, that's kind of what works. Yeah, I don't know. I won't consider myself an introvert by any means, but I am a person that does get drained really quickly by, crowds of people.
Yeah, I mean it's mentally taxing, and your brain is trying to keep up with 3 different conversations at one time, and especially in your position, everyone's looking at you, right? They're looking directly at you, whereas the rest of us, I think about this like you. I was at the Kentucky Bourbon Festival last year. I go up and I get a pour from you guys at your table, but you have to have that same interaction that you have with me thousands of times in a day, right? Mm-hmm. And you have to smile the entire time. You have to seem happy the entire time. And it always feels really like it feels weird from my position. I'm like, all right, I'm going to try to make this as quick as possible in the hopes that maybe you get a 3.5 second respite because you're not trying to fake a conversation. And I don't think that it comes across as fake, right? I think you're being a genuine human being, but that pulls from you all day long. So it makes sense to sort of try to find your fortress of solitude or, rewilding yourself. I like the grounding, and I think the effective idea of reclaiming your energy and grounding yourself. But that's you touched on this a little bit. You drink more than the average person, and I catch myself thinking about the fact that effectively what we're drinking is poison. Like we're drinking small doses of poison over time. Does that ever like conflict with the other part of you that wants that it is incredibly healthy? Like how do you answer that?
Absolutely. So when I'm not working, I usually don't drink at all because, right? I definitely would say that in the past year in this new project, it's substantially less because we don't have a whole portfolio of like vodka and tequila and wine. And like, there's no excuse to not be drinking something that's one of your brands, right? So now it's like, we've got this whiskey and we don't have a lot of it. So I almost don't even feel bad if I don't drink it because I'm saving it for everybody else, right, which is good. But when you work in the alcohol industry, you have switched over your relationship with consumable alcohol from being recreational to being professional. And when that happens, like you just have a completely different relationship with it. And it's not to say, trust me, I have my evenings, I have my moments where, we have a good time, but you just have to be so mindful of it, because the long-term effects of that, when I say that type of consumption, like, I don't know if this is something I can hear, like a ghost of a PR manager in my mind being like, don't say that, don't say that, don't say that. But I'll say it. When you are dosing yourself with booze all day long, and it is not uncommon for you to go and do a visit to a market and hit 8 or 9 different accounts and have 8 or 9 cocktails in that time frame. And that could be 6 hours, it could be 10 hours, doesn't matter. But that constant supply of alcohol is going to wreak havoc on your body and have very significant long-term effects. You end up going to the doctor's office and you fill out that form where it's like, how many drinks would you say you have a week? And you're not even on the options. And you're like, there's a problem here, right? But you're not having that much because you need it. You're not hiding it in a coffee mug in the morning. Like, you can't offend somebody because they came up with this cocktail in your honor, and like, you're not even going to drink it, or how dare you not drink your own stuff, or, it's interesting, but you have to find a way to balance it. And I am hyper vigilant about it. I get blood work done every 6 months just to make sure that everything is fine. And I know not everybody is that way. And you know what? I also know a hell of a lot of people in this industry who've been in it for a long time, and it will take its toll on you. It will. Right. It absolutely will.
I mean, it has to. I mean, that's just the human body, and societally, we drank a whole lot more alcohol in the colonial times than we do now. And even compared to your consumption, we're talking, little kids were drinking, hard cider as a part of their just normal day-to-day function. But that also was a period of time where, life expectancies were in the 60s. And so, like there's a direct correlation that can be made between the two things. But so what is you get your blood drawn, like what are you doing? Do you have, homeopathy? Do you have, herbal remedies? Do you have supplements? Like, what do you do to try to keep yourself as healthy as possible while, and maybe that's what those forms need at the doctor's office, like the recreational drinks versus the professional drinks. Like, I have this many professional drinks, and these are the recreational ones.
I mean, at least in Kentucky, can we update these medical history forms so that is a thing?
It would make a lot of sense because there's a lot of people here.
So I will be the first to admit, I'm so bad about drinking water. Like, growing up, we didn't drink water. We always had something with a flavor to it. And so I have to force myself to drink water. It's so silly, right? You're an adult, Jackie. Like, what do you mean you don't just drink water? Like, you're a living being. Everything drinks water. So I have to force myself on that one. I do take a lot of supplements, but I do want to preface this with, not everybody's body reacts the same way. So if I take it, whatever, that's cool. Don't go out and buy a list of things and start taking them. Always talk to your doctor first. If you really want to go the natural route, like, get in deep with an herbalist, because they will understand that side of things even more so. My physician is like he's an MD, but he is also very, very into more natural things. And so he's a really good fit for me. But dandelion is going to be a fantastic option. Nettle is going to be a great option, but it can kind of screw with your hormones. So just be heads up on that. Anything that's detoxifying, really. And even if it's just adding lemon into your water and calling it a day. And I'm not talking about the plastic lemon that you get at the grocery store, you squeeze it out. I'm talking about throw a sliced lemon in there and actually get a real lemon going in your life. You deserve real lemons. But other than that, like, I don't know. Eat at home as much as you can. Like, I love going out to restaurants, I do, but there's so much in commercially prepared food that is also going to wreak havoc on your system. And whatever, you don't have to be in the gym every day. You don't have to do anything. Like, I go to yoga like 5 times a week, and that's all I do. And I walk, and that's what I do. And that works for me. But you have to find something that works for you, and everybody is different. But there are quite a few supplements out there that will support your liver specifically. and support the detoxification system. So lean into that. If you're a person that drinks a lot and you don't have any option to not drink a lot, like realize like you can balance it out. My last blood work panel, I have the liver of a 16-year-old that hasn't even discovered Boone's Farm yet. You know what I mean? And that's coming from somebody who literally like has whiskey every single day in a lot of quantities. So it can be balanced. But you just have to dedicate yourself and want to do it and find what works for you.
You can't just say, I just do yoga, because I've done yoga a few times, and it's like saying I just walk, right? I just walk is far different than saying I just do yoga.
I know, but like I was coming from a point of like, I was like in spin class and I was going to bar class and I was also going hiking multiple times a week and I'm like climbing up 14ers and then blah, blah. Right. So for me, I'm like, I just do yoga and I feel like I'm missing something, but I'm not. I don't know.
No, yoga can destroy you if you're a sedentary person. You know, if you start from a place of unhealth, it is not a great place to be. You know, I know people that they play tennis 5 times a week and they're as active as they possibly want to be, and they go do one round of yoga and they're like, I can't walk for a week. You know, things bend ways that they shouldn't bend ever. So anyways, you can't just say just do yoga. Do you want to talk about your work with Hidden Barn at all?
Sure.
Okay, let's talk about Hidden Barn. And so this is a product. I don't really know how you want to call it. I work in digital product management, and so everything's a product, but sometimes it's a project. Doesn't matter. So you've got Hidden Barn. Kind of give us the 30-second to a minute and a half version of what you guys have going on.
Yep. So there's 4 partners, myself, Nate, Matt, and Royce. We're split 50-50 between Colorado and Kentucky. And Hidden Barn is a transparent sourcing brand wherein we go into these smaller producers and find amazing stuff. And they have all the same values that we have, which is they want to be transparent about their processes. They have quality first, no matter what. They're humble, and they're all about just having a connection with people. Not so much, I'm building this so I can sell it, or, not saying there's anything wrong with that. Just saying there's a little bit more substance to all the folks we're working with. So we go in and we batch things together. I'll take whatever's available. That's what I have to choose from, and put together batches that aren't consistent in flavor profile, but that are consistent in balance and structure. And so each release of Hidden Barn is a little bit different, and they're all 22 barrels or less per batch. So it's kind of small, but we've been going since July, and it feels like it's been so much longer than it has, but we've accomplished a lot more than we thought we would by now. And we're just opening up distribution little by little, state by state. And hiddenbarnwhiskey.com will show you all the things. And hopefully it's somewhere that you can find it if you want to try it.
Yeah. And the build to sell versus build to sustain. And I don't think that anybody is going to take what you're saying as an insult. Because there are brands that's exactly what they're doing, and that's okay. That's a business model. Yeah. It's a thing that they want to do. And they may do it 3 or 4 times and then never have to work a day in their life ever again. Or, you may build something to sustain, and then eventually somebody comes along and offers you a dollar amount that you can't refuse, because there is a number. Everybody's got a number.
Everyone has a number.
If Sazerac shows up and says, we'll give you $500 million for your brand, if you say no, I think you may be a little bit crazy. $500 million, not billion.
And I see what you're saying. There is no right or wrong to the strategy behind it. I don't mean for it to sound like, only the good people are people that want to build a legacy for generations to come. It's not about that. It's just that I have found in my experience, a lot of the people who are prioritizing the dollar are willing to compromise certain points of the production process to support that. And so it's not always the case, but it has been the case frequently enough to notice a pattern.
Yeah, if a big conglomerate wants to buy you, you have to build your brand with scalability in mind, and that means you're going to make concessions in places. That's that's sort of what it is. But and I can, in my simple ways, how I sort of gauge the success or interest on any given brand. At least Kentucky brands is really easy to do at the Kentucky Bourbon Festival. Look at the line. Look at the line for the tent. Do they burn through all their product? And I saw a pretty significant line at y'all's tent, one at Penelope, And you can kind of draw some parallels there. There's significant success in both places. You're both sourcing. They're doing their thing. You guys are doing yours. What does Hidden Barn look like in 5 years? Like, I assume you're thinking that far out. Maybe you're not. Maybe it's 3 years. Maybe it's whatever. From a vision perspective, not necessarily the exact. If it's not this, somebody's gonna be like, "Oh, you said you were going to do these things."
Yeah. So, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is just like the most obvious, that I know that we've got a lot of new make that we've purchased as we go along. We do purchase and blend things that are fully mature, but you have to plan accordingly. Yeah. So you always sidekick it with a barrel of new make every time, right? If not more than that. So that stuff will be coming to fruition in about 5 years, which is cool. We are about to launch a new sort of tangent of the whiskey that I can't really talk about, but maybe we'll have another conversation and then we'll talk about that, right? But there's more things coming. I think that we are all we're doing 1,000 jobs a person, right? Because there's only 4 of us, and it's busy, but it's not stressful. It's just busy. There's a big difference there. But so I am a part owner of Hidden Barn, but I also am on a consulting contract with Hidden Barn because equity doesn't pay your mortgage. Well, let's all learn that really quick. And so I don't know. I don't know in 2 years when that contract runs out, like, will Hidden Barn be at a place that's more automated where I won't have to have as much involvement? Like, will I renew that? Will I not? I take on other consulting projects all the time. It's just that there's 2 types of projects. There's one where I'm publicly announced as being involved in it. And there's ones where I get to just go in and get my job done and like be left alone and not have to be a show pony. Right. And there's a lot of like really beautiful products on the market that I'm really proud to have put together that nobody knows I had anything to do with them.
That's got to be the difficult side of it, right?
Like, I know what I do and I know what I do well, and I know how I can get better and I know how to get there. And I thoroughly enjoy the puzzle piecing of putting batches together and creating flavor profiles or whatever the request is for that particular project. I enjoy that without this, like, look at me, look what I've done, look at all my accolades, look at my resume. Like, it's not about that, which I think a lot of people, when they see your face shoved in public eye so much, they're like, oh, you must be so full of your seeds. What an ego on you. And it's like, no, I'd rather not be
right. It's a necessary evil to the industry that you're working in at this point. It's not something. It's not something that anybody necessarily wants, but there's probably some people that are absolutely, that's what they're after.
Yeah, and that's cool. Like, different people feed the beast differently, and that's fine with me. But like, it's not how I want to live my life when I constantly go to the store and I'm like, if my kid has a tantrum, I'm like, oh shit, people are going to be like, Jackie from so-and-so and what doesn't know how to be a parent. Like,
right. Yeah. If you're walking through the Louisville airport and you're standing right next to a picture of your own face. Right.
Yeah, that's still there. It's still there.
Do you get like a name and image likeness for that? Like, I feel like that, for every visitor, they should pay you like, 30 cents or something.
No. It's funny, that picture was taken before I was a Brown-Forman employee. It's actually 10 years old, and it was a side gig I picked up through Brown-Forman, a photo shoot that they wanted to have because they wanted more of a modern content shoot. They wanted tattoos and they wanted female and they wanted this and they wanted that. And so one of the people in the design department at Brown-Forman is on the board for the airport redesign. So that's not a Brown-Forman paid advertisement placement. It's literally the Louisville airport was like, we need something more modern. So what do you got? And they were like, hey, can we use this picture? I'm like, oh, you own the picture. I don't know. Do whatever you want with it. And so there it is. But no, I guess I signed away my rights to that picture a decade ago.
I was gonna say, if it was marketing material and it was still up after 10 years, there's somebody that is not doing their job at Brown-Forman. But if it belongs to the airport, that's a completely different conversation at that point. And so they picked you because you were a female and you had tattoos, right? So that's maybe an avenue. Like, do you feel tattoos are gaining far more recognition and acceptance in every industry, period, across the board? But do you still feel, whenever you walk into a room full of whiskey people, the consumers and the social media influencers, all those people, they're likely to be okay with it, but the people that are in management, maybe not as much. Do you feel like that's true, or am I making that up in my head?
No, you're not making this up at all. This is a real thing. Like, this is a real part of people deciding where they're going to put things on their body or not, based on what they're going to have to wear to work, and can they cover it up and all, you know what I mean? You have the corporate tattoo suit, which ends at the wrist and just goes up, and it's never really exposed. And there was a long period of time when I was, way back in the day. So we're talking 20 years ago that I got my first tattoo. And I was very careful with the placement of them, because 20 years ago, it was very much a thing of like, you're not going to get a job if you've got a tattoo showing, like, period. You're going to shoot yourself in the foot. And then I slowly but surely started like creeping them out into like more obvious places. And now I forget that I even have them because I see them so much. It's just normalized to me.
Yep.
So I don't ever think twice about the fact that someone's seeing it and thinking anything of it. I like to think that I did just fine, career-wise with them. So whatever, but It's still a thing in certain regions and with certain demographics of consumers, probably. But I got enough to worry about. I can't worry about whether or not they're going to be like, this girl must be in a biker gang or something. Like, I don't know. Like,
right. Yeah.
Date, right.
There is a definite segment, and that segment slowly dying off, on their own that follows that. But it's a thing that I'm glad to see. I've got a friend that lives north of Lexington, but he's a criminal defense attorney in Lexington, and he's got like a full sleeve, but it is absolutely it'll be covered up whenever he goes into court because of the way that he made his choices, because there is probably still some judge somewhere that's going to be like, nah, you are the criminal because you have this, that, or the other.
Right.
How do you pronounce your fragrance brand?
Oduoak. So it's
Oduoak.
Like Eau de Parfum, but it's Oduoak instead, because it's
I wanted to make sure, but I have
I appreciate that.
Pretty significant Western Kentucky accent, so I want to make sure Oduoak. So let's talk about Oduoak.
Yeah, so I started studying perfumery as a way to increase my sensory bank for descriptive analysis with whiskey. And it really triggered a lot of curiosities in my mind of like, okay, the process of building perfume is very technical and very methodical. And I think sometimes when it comes to distilled spirits, when you're combining things or batching things, sometimes it's just sort of, well, this is what we have, so we're going to dump it all together and hope for the best. And some people, especially with old world whiskey, are a little bit more strategic about it, but everyone's process is different. You can't necessarily be like, I'm going to teach you how to blend whiskey, like, because everyone's palate is different. Everyone's mind is different. There's certain things you can say, like, this is something I've learned does not work, so don't try this. Like, but I can't give you my exact process in a way that you can replicate because you're not me. So I found it quite interesting the way that perfumes are built from a molecular weight perspective, more so than anything in the order of addition and the curing process that has to happen, everything else. But perfume in general is fragrance oil, whether it be natural, synthetic, doesn't matter, combined with completely neutralized alcohol, perfumer's alcohol, if you want to call it that, so that only the fragrance oils shine through because they're expensive and they're delicate and you want to only smell those. Well, but I love the aromatics of whiskey so much. And I always smell like whiskey anyways, because I've been pulling samples and I, show up to pick my kid up from school and they're like, Bennett's mom, she really had an afternoon again, didn't she? Mm-hmm. And it's like, no, I swear it's just on my clothes. I swear, officer, like whatever, Right. But it's funny to me. So I always had the way that I get inspired is through experiences and capturing different elements of those experiences, whether flavor or scent, and putting them together. This is how I always was inspired for cocktails. Like, let me just capture this person in the form of something that you can taste, right? Different elements of places and what have you. So with Oduoak, I actually take these experiences that I've had, good, bad, ugly, whatever, when I had a glass of whiskey in hand and capture all the different elements of it, whether it's the smell of the person I was with, or I was smoking a cigarette, or the dessert that I had, or the place that we were in, or the tree that was blooming, all of those things, literally every sensory element of that is put into a balanced and structured fragrance blend. And then that combined with whiskey and sometimes some perfumers alcohol, just to bring the proof up to where they can actually like all get along together. So they all do smell like whiskey because they're made out of whiskey, but they're all inspired by moments that I have chosen to capture in scent form. It has been an amazing thing that I started as a way to like what I consider pay off my karmic debt for peddling poison that people are consuming, right? I'm like, how can I also be engaged in my love of whiskey and everything about it and the process of it, but offer it up to the world to experience in a way that they're not consuming it. And so that is where Oduoak came from. I started it 1.75 years ago. I went through a packaging change. I mean, I'm at the point now with it where like, I'm happy to like work in the whiskey industry still and do the things that I do and do well. But eventually, like, this is where I'm heading. This is my calling. This is what I love. And this is what I'll ultimately just end up doing exclusively. And that's awesome. I used to order like glass by the dozens, and peddle out a couple of bottles at a time. And now I've got like pallets of shit showing up to my house. And I'm like, how did this happen? But it's fun and it's human and it's real and it's authentic. And there's a lot of work behind it. Every single bottle has been filled by me. Every drop of it has been made by me. Every design choice has been done by me. All the website, all the social media, all the everything, 100%. I am a one-woman shit show. And that's my side job, right? Like, I don't know where I've found extra hours in the week, but I have magically found this like treasure trove of extra time to work. But I think part of it also just comes down to when you thoroughly enjoy something so much and it brings your heart so much peace, you just do it and you don't feel like it's work. Like, oh, do what you love and you never work a day in your life. Like that silly saying. It's actually like, do what you love and you will work every minute of your life because you don't identify it as work and it doesn't drain you that way. It's just joy that you're just sharing it with the world. And so, yeah, Oduoak, I don't know. It's kind of like a silly thing. Like what a hysterical thing to do, but it's working and I love it.
And I don't necessarily think that it's silly. I mean, you're pulling from the same things, at least from my perspective, and I think a lot about food. Like I really, really like food a lot, like good food. I mean, in some bad food too, but in the culinary industry, like you eat with your eyes first, your nose second, and your mouth is the last thing. Like that is the very last thing. And so when you have attractive packaging, and then you come in with these smell, at least to me, smell is far more reminiscent than any other sense that you have, right? Because for some reason, it just feels like scents linger in your memory far, far longer than an image does, or even than many tastes do. And tastes change over time, but a smell just sort of cements itself. And so it makes sense, or at least to me, it makes sense that if you have a passion for an industry where you're spending a lot of time with your nose in a glass, right? You're already attuned to the smelling portion of it. Now it's just saying, hey, I can turn this into something else, right? And
yeah,
like it makes complete sense. And I can only imagine, and maybe I'm wrong here, but I can only imagine it's going to also pay dividends for blending as well, right? Like as you move into blending a whiskey, you're doing the same thing when you're trying to put all your scents together. You're trying to put flavors together and scents as well.
Yeah, it's interesting because I obviously have had more years of experience with actual like tasting and finding balance through mouthfeel and all the textures and everything else going on there and finishes and all this other crap, right? And so you get sort of automated in a way where you can go through more barrels more quickly and more samples and like assess things like just a little bit more readily than being there and being like waxing poetic in your mind about it. And forcing myself to not forcing, but when I'm dealing with the perfume line, or I call it a fragrance line because perfume, everyone's like, whoa, so it's for women. It's like, no, cologne, we associate cologne as being for men, but cologne's actually a category of fragrance that has like no oil in it at all. And it's super light. So like, let's all learn something today that like cologne is not a term for masculinity, but that's what the marketing world has now done to you. But anyways, how does one discern balance in a profile when you can't taste it? When I've been so trained to taste for balance, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now I have to be forced into this like much more fine-tuned zone of literally, it's the weirdest shit in the entire world. You might think I'm full of it, and that's okay. Maybe I am. I don't know. But I can feel in different parts of my nasal cavity and in the back, like your like way back of your throat when you're smelling things, on where things sit. And like it can smell balanced. You don't have to taste it, but there is a balance to smell. And there's a balance to structuring a fragrance because it's going to the different compounds are volatile at different points, and some of them are going to last a little longer. Some of them are a little bit lighter. And how are they going to change once they hold hands together and all of that? You're exactly right. Now that has made me expedite my whiskey sensory analysis so much faster because I have trained my nose. I'm like snapping, and like people can't see me snapping, but like I'm snapping here. You can hear it.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's just like boom, 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 because I've recognized how different compounds react with me. And then I know where that's going to go and what it's going to do. And I can just go like breeze right through it. And like I said, like, oh, sure. Yeah. Jackie, teach me how to blend whiskey. Like, okay, crawl up my nose and like, let's get going. Like, I don't really know how to explain my process other than I can feel it in my body. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I don't know, man.
No, I mean, I think it makes sense. Right. And so whenever you're describing how you smell different things in different places, my first thought goes to something like wasabi, right? Where it is the thing that hits way back in the back,
yes,
versus like a salt or a sugar is going to feel more up front, at least to me. Or, maybe, high proof alcohol, you stick your nose in high proof alcohol, it's going to hit a little further back. I think I get that to whatever degree that my layman's brain can kind of understand that, but it makes sense. It makes complete sense.
Some credit. You're probably leaps and bounds above like this average person, right? That we spoke of earlier. Mm-hmm. But so if you had a glass of whiskey and you smelled it and it smelled like butterscotch, right? And you're like, oh, okay, it's going to taste like butterscotch because it smells like butterscotch. And your brain like expects that. And you take a sip and it literally tastes like nothing. And then all of a sudden it's just like black pepper and then it disappears. There's gaps in the process, right? And you're tasting gaps in it. It should be nice on the front, the middle, and the end and linger, but not be hot, not chemical burn, not alcohol burn. The exact same thing happens with fragrance, but I go through that whole thing and I can literally smell and feel gaps in the blend and what molecular weight compound is going to fit in there to bridge it all together. So this is really, this is like the most in-depth I've ever gone talking about this. So thank you for even giving me the space to do that, because I think people see it and they're like, oh, Jackie's making like body spray now. And she's like started an Etsy shop or some shit. She's making candles. And it's like, no. Like this is a whole thing. I am a complete nerd, but I love it. And it's
hard. When you throw the term molecular weight around, then you're stepping out of Etsy ground and into I have my own website and my own shipping methodologies. That's they're different people. You're not knitting a koozie or anything like that. Hold on just a second.
Which is still a very wonderful art form, and all the koozie knitters out there in the world, like Godspeed to you. I hope you all just kill it with your knitted koozies. But it's a weird thing to get into because I feel like I had a name and a presence in a very God, I hate that I keep bringing this up, but a male dominated industry and a male dominated consumer group. And then I start this and I'm like, no one's going to give a shit about this because this is a more feminine industry. And I don't even know how to conduct myself in a feminine oriented industry. Like fragrance usually leans that way. So note to everybody, they're all unisex. None of them are really like one way or the other, but it's a weird space that I know nothing about. The whole industry is weird. You see perfume commercials and you're like, what the hell was that? Like, that's like an acid trip, like dream happening here. Like I don't know what that means, but it's hard but I love it. And so I just keep doing it and it seems to be working. So here we are.
I mean, you've obviously tapped into something, and I don't know what it is, but I feel like whenever I was, and maybe it's just an age thing, whenever I was like 15, 16, 17, so you think mid 90s into the early 2000s, it felt like cologne and perfume were like in their heyday, and it feels like it's not as much of a conversation anymore, but I think it's on the edge of it because people are more interested in subtle aromas and, understanding where their things come from and not, mass marketed, whatever else. So I think it's probably, I would guess it's a market segment that probably will grow pretty significantly for you. And it doesn't hurt that you can blend up something that's going to smell fantastic. I know a couple people who have purchased items and they feel very, very good about it. And these aren't people that I wouldn't necessarily think were purveyors of fine fragrances. So they're absolutely on board with it. And I know we're getting close on time. I got a couple more questions I do want to ask.
It's okay. We can keep going. We're good. Let's just keep going until we're done.
All right. Yeah, I try to be aware of your time because mine is...
I appreciate that for sure. I just have to pick up a kid from camp at, I don't know. I got at least 15 minutes for you though. So like,
what kind of camp are you doing?
He's just at regular summer camp. He goes like same schedule as school, so we can, not sit on the couch or in front of a screen all day.
I understand. I've got a kid that's leaving for overnight camp on Monday, and this is her last year of doing this particular one.
So she's been through this before.
Yeah, this is so the state of Kentucky does a series of like wilderness outdoor type camps, part of the Fish and Wildlife. They've got 3 or 4 in the state. They run through, I think you start in 4th grade, and the last year you can go is the summer after 6th grade.
Okay.
So it's this window. Anyways, in our portion of the state, it's called Camp Curry, but they all have the regional names. There's one in central Kentucky and one because I'm far western. I'm far western Kentucky. Okay. Anyways, so they do. They're my kids, and I've asked you. I think I've got a question that kind of ties into this in a little bit. They're not necessarily like outdoors, let's go hunting and fishing and do everything else, but they're a little bit country kid feral, where they're very likely to be building some type of a fort outside, not wearing shoes, whatever. And so she leaves for camp, and my younger child is very upset because she's not old enough to go yet. So she'll get to go next year because they're only 3 years apart. So they just won't be there at the same time. But in that vein, so we have these 2 kids. My wife and I sat down about a year ago and we realized we only have like these like 6 summers left before we start having to plan around like college life or whatever else for vacations, right? And we want our kids to experience things because West Kentucky is not the most diverse of places, and seeing and experiencing new things is key to being at least a valuable member of society, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Next summer, our intent is to spend some time in Colorado.
Yes.
So for kids that aren't necessarily outdoors people, but they are a little bit country feral, what is a thing? So we're targeting the Denver, Colorado Springs, Estes Park area. That's what we're trying to target. What is a thing? Like, what is a thing we should do? Because you love Colorado, I think.
I do. I absolutely do. I'm actually leaving to be up there for a week in a couple of days. So this is perfect timing. But my child is the same way, where he does enjoy being outside. But trust me, there have been plenty of times where I'm like, we're going to go on a hike. And he's like, oh, I don't want to do that. I'm tired. And like, I had a thing with him when he turned 4. This was a hard day, but I was like, you're 4 years old and we've been going, you go on your like easy little, like 1 mile, half mile, like loops, and you go and do all the like crap. But I told him, I was like, you're going to do 4 miles on your 4th birthday. And on your 5th birthday, you're going to do a 5-mile hike. And on your 6th birthday, then on and so forth. And when you turn 12, I'm going to take you backpacking, because I'm not taking a child by myself backpacking. Like, it's just not intelligent, like for many reasons. So he did 4 miles, but he was not on the ground for all 4 of them. I had to carry him for 3 miles on my back. And a 4-year-old is not that small of an entity. So we've been working on that year by year, but I think when it comes to that outside fresh air time for kids, even if your kid doesn't like to be outside, your kid is still a human being, right? And this goes out to everybody hearing this, all 7 or 8 people, as you joke about. They need sunshine. They need fresh air. We are humans. We are animals. Like, we need that for balance. And there are so many different options out there, but don't force, just pay attention to what they like. So like Bennett, my son, for example, he loves snow. So I take him up to Colorado. We literally will go in the wintertime, get an Airbnb, and he can just play in the snow in the yard all day. Perfect. Great. He doesn't need to learn how to ski. He doesn't need to do any of that shit. Like, he just needs to be outside and having a good time. So if you're going to go to Colorado, I did take him last year down to the Colorado Springs area. So that's like southwest from where Denver is. The Cheyenne Mountain Zoo, where you can feed the giraffes and like all the animals are kind of bouncing around you. And some of them are kind of like loose. That's an amazing experience there. If you're really feeling up for it, the incline there is literally like a staircase into like the sky. It's a hard little thing, but you know, fun to challenge yourself. Yep. There are quite a few peaks that you can drive to. Like Pikes Peak is a great example of this. There's another one that's escaping me, but it's somewhere right there off of 70 before you get to Idaho Springs as well. Just being out there and in it. You can go sledding. You can do dog sledding in the wintertime, which is fun for them. Snowshoeing is an awesome thing for kids as well. And tubing and just like, you know, regular sledding and what have you. These are all options. But when you start getting into the Estes Park area, you know, you're closer to the Rocky Mountain National Park, which is great to go to. Take them there. The wildlife viewing is amazing. And there's all these like kitschy little mountain towns up there, right? Like there's a saltwater taffy store on every damn corner everywhere. And you can do all the hokey shit, you know, like I don't know. I think it's so fun, but there's nothing but things to do out there. And, I'm so excited for you to take them out there, but you know, closer to home, like I am a huge advocate of the Ozarks of Missouri and Arkansas, the riverways, to go on float trips, just to hang out in the river and just chill in the water and go camping. Because that's where I'm from. That's where I grew up. So that like triggers back to like nostalgia for me of like, oh, we used to just literally go play in a creek. Like that is what we did. We didn't go to Disneyland for vacation. We drove down to southern Missouri and we caught crawdads in a creek and it was a blast.
Yeah.
And things like that, you know? But
I live in far western Kentucky, like, you know, the part that most of people in Kentucky don't know exists, right? Beyond Owensboro and Bowling Green. There's like another 2 hours of state beyond that, but you know,
but you know what you're not too far from. I'm sure you've already gone out there. Is the Garden of the Gods area in Illinois?
We've been a couple times. Yeah. It's like a 35 minute drive from our house. It's not too bad.
Whoa, really?
Yeah.
Oh my God. I would be out there.
Like, you know, the boot of Kentucky, the little boot, we're the bottom right-hand part of the boot. That's the county we're in. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's just straight up driving and they love that. And, you know, I think maybe 2024 may be the year of kitsch for us, because I think for spring break, we're planning on going to Gatlinburg, which we've, you know, been a number of times, but like do the, you know, the hokey dinner shows and go to the kitschy shops and buy all the things, you know, because kids need those experiences too, right? But this is a part of my formative years as well, you know, like understanding those things.
I love that. I took Bennett out to the Smoky Mountains a couple of years back. We didn't go into the Gatlinburg side. We stayed on the Townsend side, but just the amount of hikes to waterfalls and everything else. And like, it's just beautiful out there and it's so close. Like
it's outdoors and it's like a 5.5 hour drive for us, and going to the Ozarks, going into the Branson area is about a 5.5 hour drive for us as well. It's about the same. We're almost dead smack in the middle. So I've done both of those trips as a kid. Those make it on the list for our short-term trips. We try to save summers for the ones that are like, oh, it's going to take us 12 hours, 15 hours, or a plane flight to get somewhere.
Yeah.
And I've got one last question that I specifically have lined out here, and you've got a kid to pick up. So in a lot of your social media posts, you'll have different quotes from very interesting places. And I assume, and I may be wrongly assuming, that you're a person who has a deep attachment to books or movies or music of some type, right? So what is of those three things, book, movie, song, what is something that we should all be listening to or reading or watching?
Oh shit, that's hard because everybody connects with different stuff accordingly, right? Like I pass along things that I kind of come across in the world of my screen in front of my face at all times. But I am a person, I've got a lot of different places of inspiration, and I don't know that they're necessarily a fit for most people. Some of it's kind of weird and unorthodox.
Okay, so where's a place that you've been? How about that? That may be more appropriate. Not where we should be, but where you've been recently, whether it be music, song, book, if you feel like sharing.
Okay. This is not a family podcast, or is it? No. Okay. So I for any ladies, I don't know how many of the 7 or 8 people are ladies out there, but I'm going to share with you a book that is going to change your entire life. This has been one of the most impactful books that I've come across. And I buy books and then they sit there. I get like 5 pages in and I fall asleep and I never touch it again. So I'm an Audible person, like an audiobook all day long kind of person, especially when you're on the road all the time.
Yep.
The book is called Pussy. And it is all about reconnecting with your feminine self and the empowerment that comes from that, from a center of sexual energy. And I know that this can be kind of like a weird subject for people. It makes some people like kind of cringe, but there's a lot to be said about the disconnect that women have with their actual natural tendencies and preferences. And like, I think we're all kind of forced to operate in a world that's very left brain logical, as opposed to feeling into like, how does my body react to that? What does my heart say about that? We think of that as being like flighty or emotional charged. You need both. You have to have both. And so Pussy, it's by Regina. I don't remember her last name, but I can look it up. It's been a really great one. I can't believe I just said that on a podcast, but I did. And here we are.
If you need me to cut it, I can, but you're fine. There's no...
Another one that's really amazing, an author, her name is Martha Beck, and she does a lot of talks about just like the path that's right for you and following intuition and following, like I said, body reactions, as opposed to like trying to constantly like pro con list everything to death, and just trusting that like gut feeling that you have about stuff. So she does a book called Finding Your Own North Star. Her story is insane. Like, she's incredible. But Martha Beck, like, very inspirational woman, very clear, easy to digest information that puts a lot of things into great perspective and gives a lot of very like tangible, useful offerings on how to apply it to your own life. So that's part of it too. I get into all kinds of weird shit. I mean, this is a whole other episode of like Jackie's weird, witchy bullshit that she leads her life by, but whatever.
Any time you want to talk about it, the door is always open. Those are the more interesting conversations. I've had a few people where we've had some pretty significant spiritual based conversashi and I mean, it's a part of who everybody is. Well, it's a part of who some people are. Some people aren't, and that's fine too. You know, you don't have to be spiritual, but I like multi recommendations, and I'll pass it along and may even read them myself. We'll see what happens. I'm in the same place. There's 3 books that are stacked up on this table right here, and I've read about 10 pages of each one of them. And about a month and a half ago, I was like, you know what? I'm going to refocus on, I'm going to try to read 10 pages a day, and I'm going to journal every day. And I'm going to do these things for my own mental health, and that worked really well for about 5 days. And then kids and work and life and all those things happen, and try to give myself the grace of like, it's okay. You don't have to.
It is, because somewhere along the line, somebody said journaling is a good thing, and you need to do this and you need to do that. And here's the whole list of like how you can be a good person in the world and like actually show that you give a shit. Like, throw that out the fucking window, like, entirely. When you get to a place where you trust, even if things don't make sense in your mind, but you trust how your body is reacting to it. This is a great point. Like, this is a great way to end on this too, is that I noticed the stress overload of my last job having physical manifestations, and whether it was my health was failing or I was having certain things, you just aren't existing as your best form. And it's okay to recognize that and go, guess what? Instead of being on this medication and this one to counteract that, and then take another one to counteract that med, and then take another one to counteract that med, and blah, blah, blah. What if I just get rid of the thing that's causing all of this? And it doesn't make sense. I should stay here. The should can take you down. The should monster will take you all the way down. But if you go, that didn't feel really right. I don't really like being around that person. I feel kind of weird around that person. Or, that decision doesn't really sit well with me. Okay, screw it. Get rid of it and trust it. And guess what? As soon as you do that, you've created space for things that are right for you to open up and be there in your life. And there's no way of knowing what they are. There's no guidebook. It's not one size fits all. The only real answers you have are your body's reaction to things, not your mind, because your mind's going to lie to you, and it's full of all those shoulds and shouldn'ts and at this age, you should have already been this, and you should own a house, and you should have this much money saved, and you should do this, and you shouldn't do that. No. The beauty of being in this life is that you get to do what you want with it, and you should really take advantage of that and enjoy it, because you can. I say that as like a privileged, like, white girl in America or whatever, but like, I'm not going to shame myself for that too much. I say it as a person who's been through a lot of shit and learned some things are okay to let go of, and it actually works out for you.
Yeah. I love that. So that is a fantastic place to end. I appreciate you for sharing your time with me. I was serious. If you ever want to hop on and chat again, it's always available as long as I can squeeze it in my schedule. You can squeeze it in yours, but I know your time is precious. You've got a child that needs to be picked up. And so thank you so much for hopping on.
Thank you so much for having me. We will chat again. We will find a time, and it's going to get weird, and it's going to be great.
Absolutely. Thanks for tuning in for this offering from the Embellish Podcast. If you enjoyed this, please leave me a review on whatever platform that you have to be consuming this on. Leave a comment if possible. Hit me up on social media at Twitter or Instagram using Embellish Pod. And give me a follow so you can keep up with what's going on here and there. I can be found at www.embellishpod.com with all of my links, accounts, contact details, and more. Thanks for stopping by today.